years. And we'll keep on talking about feelings, talking about feelings, talking about feelings. And then, like, it's not clear to me what the patient gets out of that. And so there are a couple of things that we have to say kind of in defense of therapy, because it's not all bad and it's actually really good. The first is, if this is so bad, like, why does everyone focus on self-love and self-compassion? And this is what's really important to understand, is that for about half of patients, the single most revolutionary thing you can do for them is to teach them self-love. So I think the reason that we're biased this way as the field of therapy is because for half of the people, if we can teach them self-compassion, all of their problems will be fixed. And that's kind of the goal of therapy, right? That's the approach, is that, like, the problem isn't that you lack knowledge to solve this particular thing. The problem is that there's something inside you that as long as it's broken and isn't really functioning properly, you could try to go on fixing things out there and it'll never work. And that's a really valid approach. Like, literally in my practice, I'd say, like, the most transformative thing is teaching people self-love, but for half the people. The real problem is that for the other half, it doesn't seem to work, because not everyone is traumatized and not everyone sort of needs more self-love and self-compassion. And in fact, for half the people that walk into my office, if I tell them, hey, bro, you need more self-love, they hate it, because these are people, and you may be one of them, that don't deserve self-love. You don't deserve compassion because you suck at life, right? And, like, I'm not here to teach myself how to love this pathetic version of me. This is not what I'm interested in. I actually don't want to love this person. Give your self-love to someone who deserves it. What I actually want to do is create a life that I can be proud of. Something where I deserve love and confidence and like all that good stuff is, like, appropriate. And if people come into our office that way, unfortunately, a lot of my colleagues will be like, no, you need to self-love. You are deserving of love. You're not pathetic. Like, love yourself. And that can actually be damaging in a couple of ways. The first is that it's incredibly invalidating, because your patient is coming in and they have a fire to transform their lives, and here you are telling them, no, let's shut off the fire. Which brings us to the second thing, which is that let's remember that negative emotions are drivers for positive change. So if I get angry at someone because they steal from me, instead of, like, processing that anger with a therapist, I can use that anger to set boundaries with them and block them, right? The other thing is, if we look at emotions like guilt and shame, like, we can go into a therapist's office and we can metabolize them with the therapist, but why do we feel guilt? We feel guilt because sometimes we do the wrong things, and guilt is an emotion that helps us do the right thing. That's how we know the difference between right and wrong. If we didn't have guilt, we wouldn't have an internal moral compass. And so this is the real problem, I think, with a lot of this self-love approach to therapy, is that we forget that, like, not loving yourself can be a really, really good motivator. And this is where we kind of come to a really important part of, like, the alternate way, okay?
Okay, I do get his point. For record, I think I'm on the camp that really has to start loving themselves. And if you ask me in a different way, I don't really want to change. I think I'm perfectly fine as I am, or whatever interests me, I am fine of. Because I'm just open for new things anyways, and to learn more and these kind of things, self-improvement. I enjoy progress and stuff, but we do want to change after all, in terms of self-care for one, of course, and then I guess that's not after this there's gonna be more, that's not gonna be all of it. So whatever we're gonna find out and we can grow with, that's what we're gonna do. So there is a change involved, but not like a radical one where I need to be angry about it to make a change. But I get exactly what he's talking about. I hope they're gonna go into some other stuff.
So if we're not going to do self-love, which
it's not for us otherwise,
very,
this
very
video.
Positive. But for some people, it doesn't work. And for those people, and if you're one of these people, let's remember that there are two ways that you can deal with emotions. So when I'm a human in the world will do stuff to me. And when the world does stuff to me, I will feel things. And then I've got two options to deal with these feelings. I can either process them internally, or I can change the circumstances that make me feel a particular way. All right, so here's an example. Let's say that I go to the beach, and when I go to the beach, I feel a little bit embarrassed about the way that I look. And so I've got two options in this situation. One is that I can go and talk about my feelings, which can be really effective, right? So let's say I'm going there with my partner or my friends, and I voice to them, hey, I'm feeling a little bit embarrassed. And they're like, look, man, it's totally cool. Like, you're a sexy beast. Like, look at you. You're so sexy. Oh my God, you're so sexy, right? Or that, hey, like, no one really cares, and we're here to have fun. And like, they can give you some reassurance. They can give you a little bit of TLC. Yeah, you can feel a little bit embarrassed, but you can work on it internally. The other thing that you can do if you feel embarrassed about the way that you look is you can exercise and you can change your diet. And you can actually transform the circumstances that make you feel a particular way. Now, this is the big problem with therapy, is that generally speaking in therapy, we don't really focus on the latter. There are some absolutely great clinicians who do focus on that. We can look at evidence-based techniques like motivational interviewing that are really designed around behavioral change and stuff like that. But generally speaking, most therapists don't specialize in changing external behavior. And when I was sort of super interested in this at this place called McLean Hospital, I talked to the chief of psychiatry there, and I was like, how do we actually get patients to change their lives? And that's when he told me, he was like, hey, you should check out this place called the Institute of Coaching, which is all about creating external change for our patients as opposed to using psychotherapeutic models to heal the pathology. So it's super cool, and I looked into it, and I really found that it was a good fit. So let's remember that when it comes to us feeling a particular way, and like if you're ashamed of who you are or how you look or how much money you make, there's actually a whole different way to manage those emotions, which is to actually fix the crap in your life that makes you feel that way. It's not just about metabolizing that emotion. And this is what happens, is if we start to focus entirely on emotions, then what starts to happen is sometimes we can stall. So I had a patient, for example, who was like in the clinic that I was working at for 20 years, and they kept on getting passed on from one resident to another resident to another resident. And so there's one argument to be made there is like maybe they should have worked with someone who's not a training psychiatrist and worked with a real psychiatrist who's fully trained, and that could have helped them. They'd done that too. But I think the bigger problem is that this person kind of came into my office and was like, I'm really unhappy with my life. I'm depressed all the time. I'm like, why are you depressed? Well, I'm depressed because of this, and we talk about feelings. And then I asked them, are there times in your life when you haven't felt depressed? And they were like, yeah, I was dating this person once who had a really nice car, and we'd drive somewhat recklessly, and then we'd have really wild sex. And it made me feel like James Bond. And so I did what I was supposed to do, right? Because I had the professor of psychiatry who came in and told me, no, never change a patient's life, just talk about their feelings. And so I was like, okay, well, let's just talk about your feelings and what feels so great about having James Bond sex. And towards the end of our therapy, I started to get frustrated with that. They started to get frustrated with that. We'd been doing that for a couple of years, and I was like, bro, do you want to change your life? And he's like, yeah. And then we started working on that, and we made huge progress.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we kind of look at this externalizing approach to our emotions, which generally speaking is bad. So for example, if we look at a lot of what gets men into trouble, it is that this is the only strategy they have. So if someone makes me feel a particular way, I'm going to change my circumstances so that they no longer make me feel that way. This opens the door to things like emotional manipulation. This is how bosses will kind of squeeze their employees because they make you feel guilty. And if they can make you feel guilty, they can shape your behavior. And if they can shape your behavior to make you feel less guilty, now they can control your behavior by controlling your emotions. And so a big part of very successful therapy is actually helping people get away from this sort of approach of, let me fix the outside world to make myself feel a different way. On the flip side, though, sometimes we actually want to use that. And this is where I got kind of curious about military recruits. And let's remember that military recruits will oftentimes join the military because they're unhappy with their lives and they're depressed and they're not going anywhere. And then after serving some period of time in the military, sometimes there are cases of trauma and sexual assault and things like that. I've seen that working with veterans. But actually, I would say the majority of patients I've worked with really appreciate being in the military. They learn so much and they develop so much confidence. And what's going on there? How is it that the military can be so overtly abusive, right? You've got a drill sergeant who's telling you, hey, you suck, you're going to fail. And yet you come out of that experience feeling stronger. Does a swift kick in the ass actually work? And if it works, what is the underlying psychological principle at play? So let's actually look at research on the psychology of people who go to boot camp. So there are a couple of really interesting aspects to it. The first...
Okay, ich hoffe, der geht noch darauf ein, was ich machen kann jetzt in meinem Fall, weil das wurde nicht angesprochen. Aber guter Vergleich auf jeden Fall und auch interessant. Das war ein bisschen weniger damit zu tun, auf was ich jetzt eine Antwort gehofft habe, aber ist okay.
Is that while they are verbally abusive, which is bad, right? They actually are implicitly very, very invested in you and don't give up on you. I think this paradox is really important to understand. So if you actually join the military, there'll be drill sergeants, and I went to a military school for a little while, so I have a little bit of personal experience, who will tell you that you're going to fail out. You're pathetic. You're never going to make it. You're never going to make it. You're going to fail. You're going to fail. You're so pathetic. But they never kick you out. Right? They sort of teach you one really important principle, which is that even though I'm telling you you're going to fail, I'm not actually going to kick you out ever. You can fail today and I'm going to be here tomorrow. You can fail tomorrow and I'm going to be here the next day. No matter how many times you fail, what determines whether you succeed or fail here is actually you. You can quit whenever you're ready. And you should have quit a week ago. You should quit today and you should quit tomorrow. But until you quit, I will actually continue to be here for you. And this is a really fascinating kind of perspective. And there's actually research on this, where this is also kind of a masculine sort of thing. So if we look at men, we do something called the negative expression of a positive affection. So when I started dating the person who was going to be my wife, like, my friends were happy for me, but they could not stop giving me shit about it, right? They were happy. They were like, and I could tell they were happy. They're like, oh my God, Alok, you're so whipped. Bruh, you're so whipped. Bruh, you're so whipped. You're so pathetic. Like, oh my God. Like, oh, did you go to Victoria's Secret and buy some lingerie for yourself? Because yo ass is whipped. And this is what we do to each other as men. When we are proud of each other, we actually express it in a negative way. So it is the negative expression of a positive affection. And it turns out that this is actually useful in a couple of ways. So if you have some degree of self-loathing or hate yourself, if you sort of have this negative expression, it can be very validating, right? Because someone else telling you, like, yeah, man, like, I can see that you are a loser. Like, you're technically correct. I can see that. What are you going to do about it? So this is the really important thing that we sort of discover from the psychology of military recruits, is that negatively expressing stuff is okay as long as there's faith underneath that, like, you will make it in the end. And what we actually discover is that what boot camp does to people is it improves this psychological concept called grit. And grit is the very opposite of, like, all this self-love and self-compassion stuff. So in 2007, there was a psychologist named Angela Duckworth who discovered this concept called grit, which is sort of like this personality characteristic, which is like people don't give up. It's not self-love. It's not self-compassion. It's not like, it's related to resilience, actually, is the closest thing. But she basically noticed that some people, like, quit when things go bad, and other people, like, stick with it. And if you really look at, like, boot camp, what does boot camp do? It boosts grit. Hey there, thanks for watching, and I'm glad these videos have been helpful. A lot of times I'll read the comments and see people asking, well, what do I actually do about it? Which is by, like, build networks of friends and even do things like discuss. And so there's an alternative to going down the route of self-love. And if you're someone who gets incredibly frustrated by, like, I don't want to love myself, I don't deserve to love myself, I actually want to make something of my life, you don't need to force yourself into doing something that feels unnatural. Instead, what you need to focus on is building grit. And building grit is not about doing it.
Wait.
Someone who gets incredibly frustrated by, like, I don't want to love myself, I don't deserve to love myself, I actually want to make something of my life. You don't need to force yourself into doing something that feels unnatural. Instead, what you need to focus on is building grit. And
okay, but am I a candidate for this? It does feel unnatural to me. But it's not that I don't want it. Right? I want it. The way I love another person, of how I am capable of loving another person, and I know it's big love. I never have that for myself. If I am to understand correctly, then self-love is being able to love yourself as such, if not even more. So, yeah, it's unnatural to me because I don't know it. But do I want it? Yeah. So I think I'm not a candidate for grit, right? I don't think so. I don't think so, honestly. Actually, I'm also done with having this toxic masculine banter. I don't mind it really, but it's just I'm done with it. This negative expression of positive, what did he say? Of positive, I forgot the word. But you know, when guys shit talk each other, but they are friends. It's very interesting though, what they're talking about. Oh, ach ja, wir sollten ja Deutsch reden, ne? Geht noch lustig.
And building grit is not about doing it or accomplishing, because let's remember, if you lack confidence, you can't accomplish anything. Instead, building grit is just about not giving up. And so if you are able to make this cognitive reframe, and instead of focusing on even succeeding, what you really need to focus on is, I'm going to keep trying and I'm not going to give up no matter what. And if you're able to do that, this is going to be the alternate path to transform your life. So that if you can shape the circumstances around you by not giving up, then you will deservedly feel love and pride and confidence for what you've accomplished. So this frustration that I have with the field of therapy and the sort of introduction to coaching is literally why we started a coaching program. it's one of the things that I got the most frustrated about is that if you look at therapists, we do not take responsibility for improving external things in people's lives. We absolutely take responsibility for improving clinical outcomes, like reducing feelings of depression. But therapists, generally speaking, if you walk into an office and you say, hey, can you help me accomplish this in this amount of time? Most therapists will shy away from that. And that's because that's not what we're trained for. And this is why the field of coaching is emerging so much. It's because there's a whole ability to use everything we understand about the psychology of the mind, but point in a different direction, which is not healing on the inside, but accomplishing on the outside.
Dude,
So
das ist eine Marktlücke.
Video for y'all. I'm with you in terms of like, I don't really care much for the self-compassion and self-love. It's not how I put together my life. I decided to walk this other path of let me understand myself and then craft a life that is worth living. And if y'all want to do that, the most important place to start is with the